What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Behind the Door podcast with Jeremy Hiltz and Brandon Brown and a team of absolute superstars. We're here today to we're going to do a pretty tough episode of this podcast today, man. We're sitting here, it's November 1st, 2023, and we're 7 days past the 10th deadliest mass shooting in United States history since 1982, and the deadliest mass shooting of 565 mass shootings that have happened in the United States of America this year, and it occurred just a few miles down the road from us, where we're recording now. So for those of you that have listened in and don't know, where Jeremy and I and the team of extraordinary superstars who work on this podcast with us are all part of the Lewiston, Maine community and the greater Lewiston community. And seven days ago, we had a mass shooting at two places in Lewiston that left 18 people dead and 13 people pretty severely wounded, including a father and a son, a young girl, and just a bunch of people who were out, building community. And it's a pretty tragic thing. I mean, it's not pretty tragic. It's, incredibly tragic, this thing that happened. And I think it's interesting, Jeremy, for us, we do this podcast and we do this work in recovery and reentry and prison reform, and things like this happen, and it really puts into perspective, which might be surprising to some people, some of the work that we do and how relevant it is to what we're doing, because we're always talking about community and we're always talking about compassion and second chances and empathy. And these are the type of events that really challenge our thoughts on those things, but also make it incredibly important to come together and actually talk about what all this means, and, in light of a massive, massive, horrible tragedy that our community has suffered. So, we're going to talk about it today. We're going to unpack some of the stuff and its relevance to the conversations that we have on the podcast and the stuff that we do professionally and personally in our communities. And I just kind of toss it to you, Jeremy. What was, when all this happened last Wednesday, what was the first thoughts that were going through your mind when you heard about it?
Well, it's like disbelief. I didn't know exactly what was going on, right? But I was on the street. We were getting ready to have a house meeting, and I was waiting for the guys to show up, and next thing you know, there's sirens and helicopters and all these, just this complete chaos. And you're just like, what is going on in the city? What's going on around us? What's actually happening? And we were in the middle of this house meeting with all these guys and stuff, and alerts started coming off on our phone. There's a mass shooting and there's a shelter-in-place order, and it's like this moment of like, what? Just complete disbelief that this is actually touching us so closely. And you stand there, and all of a sudden you start hearing all these stories about what's actually going on, and there's talking about there's 4 shooters at 4 different locations. It's in in the moment of what's going on, it's like you're almost in denial almost about what's actually happening, right? Like because it's like it can't be happening to us, not this, not something like this, Lewiston's it's a town. There's 36,000 people there, So it's like there's the element of perceived safety that happens in small towns, and Lewiston, has a reputation already of being a tough town. It's a mill town, Lewiston's taken its bumps over the years, it was a thriving mill town for a long time, and then industries went overseas, and it left them behind in its wake. It left a group of really, really tough people, but with poverty and stuff like that, it's had its challenges, and substance use and mental health and everything that comes along with that, right? And then something like this happens, I see that our community has been really trying to stand up for a long time, trying to get it. We've been, just the landscape alone, like that we've been really trying to build it up and create nice space there and art and really try to rebrand Lewiston, and to have this be what the country is talking about Lewiston, Maine for is heartbreaking to me.
It's interesting, like the two words that you use, they're like really resonating with me. This idea of like disbelief and just like the sheer shock of it, right? Like for me, disbelief was the first emotion. I didn't believe it. I'm like, there's no way. It's Maine. You know what I mean? It's we don't have a mass shooting happening here. And the ironic part that a lot of people, might not know, even though by the time that you listen to this podcast, you'll have, seen national stories, global stories even about, this incident. But what a lot of people don't know is that just a few days before this happened, Maine was named the safest state in the country. And that's a feeling that everybody has here, right? Like people come to Maine because of the safety, because of the, we don't have a propensity to deal with issues like this. This is not something that even exists in the social consciousness. And so when I started getting text messages and phone calls about what was happening, I didn't believe it at all. I'm like, there's no way. And then when I, looked it up online and saw the news, it became pretty real for me that this wouldn't be on every news station across the country if it wasn't really happening. But then, like you said, the amount of misinformation that was going through social media, especially about what the realities of what happening were, like it set in a whole different emotion for me, like this like fear and anxiety about the information that I was getting. Like you said, I heard there was 4 shooters at numerous locations. It was a coordinated attack and this and that. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, in Maine? Like, what are we talking about? And then people started talking about, oh, it's white supremacists, it's this, it's that. All these stories started floating around, and it became like impossible to decipher what was really happening, which to me was heartbreaking because I just wanted to know what was going on in my community, right? And it's
for me, I inevitably knew that I was going to know somebody at these bowling alleys, right? At the pool hall, and that's what happened. You know what I mean? I started it didn't really become real for me until I saw the names on the list. You know what I mean? And it's like people that I've known for a long time that are community members, right? They I got umpired softball that leagues I've been playing in for a really long time, and that guy there, he's just super positive, man. He always had a joke. He was always like, he was just just a positive guy, That guy that I played softball with for a long time, and then he worked at the diner that I get breakfast at sometimes, the station on Lincoln Street, Lewiston, which is right down the street from the residential program. My stepson's father was in the shooting. It was in the building when it happened. One of the guys that was in our residential program was in the building when it happened. You see how the impact that it has on us across the board, and these, the just the loss and the way it erases people from, our community. Like, well, I'm never gonna get to the softball field again and see this guy standing on the hood of his car and like, hey, let's see what's going on, man, and have some joke for me, That's never gonna, you know what I mean? Like, those things aren't gonna happen again. The guy that was, bringing me the coffee and he smiled and, checking in, complaining about the Red Sox, those conversations aren't gonna happen no more. It's like super just devastating I just and then like the guys that I know that everybody around them is hurting. You know what I mean? Like the people that they knew. I was just, you know what I mean? Like you just, yeah, and then I start feeling for my other friends, and you just start really understanding how short and precious life really is. You know what I mean? Because you don't know. You go and you play. You go out there to shoot some bowling in the bowling league, and you don't go home that night. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It's never gonna really.
Yeah, and that's like when we talk about doing having a conversation about this. I think that's really, where we're at. Like the biggest question that everybody in the world is asking right now, I think, is why. And this is something like I just say personally, I've been struggling with for the last week is when we ask why, what could possibly compel somebody to carry out a heinous act like this and take all their pain and frustration and hurt out on, innocent people who, like you said, they're just in the bowling alley, having community, having a good time, went out there to, experience some positivity and to not come home that night or to be subjected to the extreme trauma of, surviving this type of attack. And it's like, it feels impossible to make sense of. And I think that you said it really well, like, we'll never have the real answers. But man, I've been searching for them. I've been searching for answers all week. I've been driving for work and just like sitting with what happened and sitting with the people who I know who are, directly affected, and sitting with all the fear that's in my community right now. We had Halloween yesterday, and I have dozens of friends who wouldn't take their kids trick-or-treating because of this event and some things that have happened in the week since. People are kind of going a little bit crazy right now with fear and with frustration and anger and everything that exists in the wake of a tragedy like this. And
but you also got to think about it, man. I was thinking about this after, like, for my son, he's experienced a lockdown from a global pandemic, and now he's experienced a lockdown from a mass shooting. My son, he missed a year of high school. You know what I mean? He couldn't play lacrosse 1 year. You know what I mean? And it's just like what we need. The things that have been going on are just like, it changes us as human beings. Like we just, you just get over one thing and then something else happens, and like it just feels lately like it's like, what is next? You know what I mean? Like, what is going to happen to us next?
I think that's where the fear comes from, right? The fear that people have is that exact question, like, man, this happened, and what are we going to endure as a society or as a community, as a country, as a state? What's the next thing that we're going to have to confront and face? And it's tough, man. What I've been struggling with lately is like, I think this is relevant to the work that we do, because we have systems in our country that have normalized, like, having to endure, right? And have normalized, like, anger and vengeance and punishment. And I look at the reactions that I saw on social media that I really struggled with after this, and it's like, I feel like society's attention is taken away from the things that really matter when these things happen, because people are so angry. And like, I'm angry too. I'm so angry that 18 people in my community didn't go home that night. I was so angry that 13 more people, had to fight for their life. And I'm so angry that thousands of us had to, like, hunker down in fear. But like, before I started getting overwhelmed with anger, like, I had this feeling of like this why, and also like, what are we going to do? How are we going to come back from this? And, we talk about all the time the need for people to come out of prison and experience community, and the need for people in recovery to experience community. And I think what this really prompted for me, this like horrible thing that happened in our town prompted for me is like, we also just got to talk about community. Just more generally, more broadly, like, people, regardless of your situation in life, regardless of your struggles and your victories, regardless of where you're at. Like, this made me realize where is community for us? We're trying so hard to create it, for people in need, for people who have been pushed to the margins of society. But I feel like we've lost a conversation in the wake of this, this tragedy. We're talking about reform. We're talking about gun reform. We're talking about mental health reform because our systems are broken. We're talking about, people are talking about vengeance and like, oh, this guy's hiding in the woods. Let's go find him and all this. But like, what I didn't see enough of on social media was like, how can I show up for the people in my community who are hurting right now? And I guess this is the question that I have is, why are we so quick to express all of the things that aren't going to make it better, as opposed to immediately thinking to ourselves like, holy shit, our community's hurting and we got to pick up the pieces. We got to show up with love before hate, and we got to show up with a hand before a fist. And that's the part that I've kind of been struggling with lately, is how do we show up with love instead of hate, and a hand, like an outstretched hand instead of a fist, even in the wake of something that's so terrible like this.
I think it's super easy for us to want to blame something, right? Somebody's got to be accountable. This thing has to be accountable. Everything's got to, everybody, somebody's got to wear it, right? Somebody's got to wear the blame on something, right? And even we do that to each other, even in responding to things, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this isn't how you're doing it. And, it's my thought that like we come together in ways that like so like after that, we, our guys in the program, it was the next day. They were, it was the next day, last Thursday. I called Benny up and I said, "Oh, we got to do something with them." You know what I mean? And they got some sheets and they made these beautiful Lewiston Strong sign banners, and we hung them up in front of the building, and then we hung them up in front of the thing. And those guys were super proud because like the Sun Journal used that we were the first signs that went up in the city. You know what I mean? Now they're everywhere, but you know what I mean? It was the next day. We had the signs up and we took action that way. And the people that we were around, like, you come together. We create space for people. There was a one Lewiston vigil the other night. I think there was thousands of people down there. And it's like we want to find answers on how to help, like what can we actually do? But like, that's always a question. What can you do? What I can do is like love my people more. You know what I mean? I found myself like reaching out to guys that I know that I've cared about because I've known them for 20 years, but I don't talk to them every day. You know what I mean? Because I know where I'm going to see them. I'm going to see them on the softball field. I'm going to see them I'm going to see them over here. They're not there, but I don't typically reach out to them, but I just found myself just reaching out and say, "Hey, bro, man, I'm thinking about you, man. Like, I care about you. That's it." You know what I mean? And it was just like we connected for a minute, and we just send each other these messages that we are still here. You know what I mean? Because we can't possibly as human beings like connect with everybody all the time, every day, right? But it's like when we send these messages, like one of the victims' dads was on the TV, and he was talking about like, I don't hate this guy. This guy was somebody's son. This guy was somebody's mom. You know what I mean? Like there was just, this is a father. This is like, that's who he was first. And that was like, this is the guy. He said that a day or two after his son, he killed his son. So if that guy can do it, we can't do it. And like, I can do it. You know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, like, we can't really uncover the problems of this world by talking about what somebody should or shouldn't be doing. You know what I mean? We got to look inside ourselves and see what's looking back. You know what I mean? These are these situations where I look at myself, and you kind of got to look at yourself and see how you're going to react to it, you know? And like, if you're a leader, what does that mean? What can I do? I've been thinking about that. I call, you know, Victor, our executive director. I said, what are we going to do? What can we do? And it's like, what can we do? We can be there for people. We can hold space. You know what I mean? We can tell each other we love each other and like mean that. You know what I mean?
I mean, when I mean, just hearing you recount that story of the father saying that is like, I get chills. You know what I mean? And I'm going to tell you, just like, probably not a popular opinion in society right now in the wake 7 days after this happened, but I've been driving around thinking to myself, like, dude, I'm fucking hurting for this guy, man. Like, I feel this acute sense of empathy for anybody in our world who could be hurting so bad and feeling so isolated and alone that they think that going out and hurting innocent people is some way to cure that pain. And I've always believed my whole life in the saying, hurt people, hurt people. And I've also recognized in myself, you know, for those of you who are tuning in who don't know my story, I went to prison for 13 years for shooting somebody. And when I reflect really honestly about the moment when I was capable of pulling the trigger and almost ending another man's life and causing him incredible harm, I look back at for the 3 years before that happened, I was hurting. Like, I went through things in my life when I was 17 and 18 years old that put a chip on my shoulder and made me angry and resentful, and I was lost. I had lost my way. And now, granted, I didn't at any point in that time think about, I'm going to hurt people. That was never something I wanted to do. But I got in a situation one night where I did, and I hurt somebody very, very badly. And then, you know, that person has dealt with the ramifications of that every single minute of every day since. And I spent 13 years of my life in prison, you know, confronting the parts of me that were broken enough to cause somebody pain like that. And when I think about this man who just, you know, went into 2 public spaces and, you know, killed 18 people, one of my first thoughts was, Jesus Christ, man, how could we have saved him? You know, and because if we're just being really honest with each other, when we think about how could we have saved the 18 people that he murdered, we got to talk about how could we have saved him. And so much information has come out in the last week, and I just want to like stop and just acknowledge that, like, a lot of systems failed this dude, that this man Robert Card.
There's no question.
It's like, this is becoming like, you know, this is how it always happens. I also just want to, before I even get there, point out we have had 565 mass shootings in the United States this year. That's almost twice as many days as we've had in this calendar year. And like, one thing that I'm feeling really strongly about, and I feel the need to talk about on this podcast today, is like, we can keep talking about politics till we're blue in the face. Let's talk about gun reform. Let's talk about mental health reform. Let's talk about policing and all these things that need to change. But like, we've been talking about this shit for decades, and it hasn't changed. We're on track to have almost 700 mass shootings this year, record number. So at what point do we acknowledge that the conversations that we're having aren't fixing things, they're making things worse? And what I'm thinking about right now, what I've been sitting with, is like, man, where was this guy's community at? And we talk about on this podcast community, and we talk about the opposite of addiction is connection. And we talk about, you know, feeling, you know, getting people to a place where they don't feel like everybody's judging them and looking at them, and like reframing their own stories so that they can actually believe that they can be something meaningful in this world. And I think about this dude who's a 20-year active military member, a tactical firearms instructor in literally an institution in our country that is it's built on brotherhood and sisterhood. That's what our military is founded on. And where was his brotherhood? Where was his community? And like, there's no doubt about it, this man suffered from horrible mental health issues. But what's come out in the last week is that he reached out for help, that he was institutionalized for a period of time, that the police had been requested to do wellness checks on him and take his firearms. So we know that all of our systems are broken, that they failed him, which means they failed our community too. Because look at the tragedy that we're dealing with. But I have this overarching feeling in my gut that I can't shake. And all I can say is that it's empathy. Because my heart is broken for everybody. And inside of that brokenness, my heart is broken for that man. And I just think about, what does actual prevention look like? And when I ask myself, what does prevention from incarceration look like? And when I ask myself, what does prevention from substance use disorder look like? And when I ask myself, what is prevention for a lot of the social problems that we talk about, that we've lived, that we experience looks like, man, it's the same thing. Where is our compassion for one another? Where is our community? Where is our love? And I want to say, and I know that a lot of people might not agree with this, but I think that what happened to that man before he ever got to the point where this was a possibility is that he had an absence of community, he had an absence of love, and he had an absence of belonging. And I just think to myself, we're only ever going to stop these mass shootings. We're only ever going to stop these horrible things that we experience in our communities when we actually become healthy communities. And I don't know how else to feel, you know what I mean? But my heart is broken because of this thing. And man, I just wish, if people out there are hurting and thinking about hurting themselves and hurting other people, I think I'd give you a fucking hug right now. Where are you at? I'll come tell you that that I see you. Because if that saves a life, then what better thing can we do? And I had posted on my Facebook that, we're going through this tragedy and everybody's angry and everybody's circulating misinformation, and, Lewiston is hurting right now and this is my community. But I also, and I put that we never thought this would happen to us, but I also put that I had to acknowledge Lewiston is like every other city and town in America where the majority of people in our community see somebody struggling and they put their eyes to the pavement and they change their direction and they refuse to acknowledge the struggles of other people. We are a town that criminalizes homelessness. We are a town that continues to criminalize addiction and pushes people to the margins of society where they feel alone and then blames them for that. And so in that way, we're like every other community in America. So why did we fool ourselves to believe that this couldn't happen? And so I believe the answer is love. As corny as it sounds, I believe that the only way to prevent these things from happening is community and connection and creating spaces for people to be honest about their struggles and then actually embrace them through that struggle and love them through it. And I also believe that we have to reform some of our laws and systems that failed this person and failed our community. But I don't think that if love is not the foundation of those reforms, I don't think we're ever going to change our realities. And, I don't even know how to talk about it because it feels like such an unpopular opinion. But I just want to flash back to what you said, which the father of one of the victims, I think if we can learn from him, then we can actually start to make the change. If somebody who just lost one of the most important people in our life can say, I don't hate that man, I feel bad for him, then how can any of us say that man is wrong? How could he possibly be wrong? If he's able to identify and acknowledge it, how can we not as a society do the same thing? So it's tough, man. It's tough to wrap my mind around all of the loss that we just experienced 7 days ago and all of the hatred that's permeating the conversation about it today, and all of the anger and all of the divisive politics that are existing that continue to push us further from one another instead of people just saying, man, we got to love each other. So I don't know. I guess I just wonder what's your response to, I feel like I just talked for like 15 minutes straight.
Yeah, I understand. I think what you're talking about, and I also think that it's complicated scenario, right? I don't necessarily believe that love is always the answer to this particular thing, because I don't know if somebody that's suffering from, let's say I don't know what this guy's mental health diagnosis is, but I know that he was, he self-admitted to the hospital several times. And I believe that he said he was hearing voices and things like that, right? So with that kind of thing, like, there's no, like, it's the brain is acting in a different way. You're disconnected with reality. You know what I mean? So it's really more, one of the questions that I have during this thing is that, like, we can incarcerate people for, minor crimes, like non-violent crimes, right? But if a person goes into a hospital, our laws make it so that they can't be held, you know what I mean? Or like it's very, very difficult to hold somebody for an extended period of time, to give it the condition, the help that it needs, So lots of times what happens in these scenarios is that people get stable on the medications or whatever it is, right? And they show these signs of stability for a couple weeks, and then, all right, I'm feeling better. There's no symptoms in front of me right now, or they're decreasing to a manageable level that you can take care of at home. And then they send the person back home. When, we take a look at this thing, and it's like, this guy, it's documented, it was in the papers and stuff, that he reported to his doctors that he was going to shoot up yeah. He said that he wanted to do that. And in my mind, it's like, well, why don't we hold on to that guy until he has long enough time? 2 weeks is not long enough to deal with the condition that he has.
Yeah.
Right? In some ways, does it come down to an insurance? Is who's going to pay for that treatment or whatever it is? But when in my mind too, it's like, the U.S. military trains this guy as to kill people. They train him how to show other people how to kill people. But when he's talking in a hospital about wanting to kill people, they let him out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, the guy had all the resources at the tip of his fingers to do exactly.
To actually do what it is. It's different. I don't think it's different when anybody says something like that, but it's like,
but it's not.
I think it's elevated. It's an elevated situation that, this guy has resources, money, like he was functioning, right, for a long time. He has medals and stuff from the military. Something happened, right? And it's like, but we can incarcerate people for years.
Yeah.
For things like nonviolent felonies, but we can't hold a guy that is trained to kill people, that's saying he wants to kill people. We can't hold him in a hospital for a year to make sure he's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just because he doesn't want to do it, you know what I mean? So I have these situations all the time where we get guys coming out of institutions or wherever they're coming from, and they have schizophrenia. They have these things that are going on, and it's like, the community's not going. We can't necessarily treat that community. Can't treat schizophrenia. You know what I mean? It's too complex and severe, and it breaks people from reality. It's too much, right? And so they need medical attention. They need medical care, right? And it's baffling to me that we can incarcerate so many people and for so long and not give them the help that they need. But people that are in the community that are struggling with mental health, that have the ability to carry something like this out, we can't keep them in the hospital for a certain period of time to make sure they're okay.
And we have to name it. And we have to name that. And it's interesting because what I'm also thinking about when you're saying that, like you pointed out, we live in a hyper-capitalistic society, right, where everything is dictated on money. But we can't hold somebody for beyond 2 weeks, like you said, who's making threats that are very, very credible because it's literally their professional background. They're trained to do this, and we can't spend the money to hold that person or contain them for an amount of time. But how much money do we spend to prosecute somebody who got caught robbing a store to support their drug habit where nobody got hurt. We spend thousands upon thousands. How much does it cost to incarcerate? $78,000 a year in the state of Maine for somebody to be in prison. And we couldn't spend $78,000 to treat this person's mental health.
And it wasn't like this guy. This guy is self-admitted to the hospital, looking for help himself. You know what I mean?
And when somebody self-admits and then checks himself, like, that's a pattern of behavior that's instability, right? And you're 100% right. And to be honest with you, man, until you said that, I didn't even really think about this component of it for the last week. But you are 100% right. We talk about the brokenness of our systems, and we're talking about the normalization of, punishment and criminalization of people. That we so easily throw people away into these systems. We spend extreme amounts of resources. The Department of Corrections in Maine's budget is like $250 million a year.
Let me be clear about something. Two things, right? There's two things that could have happened that he probably could have got help. One is he had a substance use disorder, right? Because there's all kinds of money for people to get into treatment. There's treatment beds for people with substance use disorders everywhere, right? Well, not everywhere. We depleted there too, but you know what I mean? That like prioritize it, almost there's more substance use treatment beds primarily than there are mental health organizations that could help this guy, right? And if he committed a crime, right, he would get more help than he got he just has the mental health history. He has he's medals, right, from the military, all these things, and but he's asking for help, but he's not getting it.
Yeah.
Right. And at the end of the day, like the people in the hospitals and things, they can only do what they can do. So the people that treated him and they you do the best you can in any given moment. We treat substance use, and we can give somebody all the tools and we can help them and we can do whatever we can do. But if they leave and they go and they have a recurrence of use when they walk out the door, they keep whatever it is, it's like, we can't hold that, right? We can't, as a provider of the service, we can't. It's so the hospitals and stuff, they do the best they can with what they have. So it's not necessarily. So when we say the systems failed them, I don't like when people like if you're listening and you work in a psychiatric hospital. I'm not blaming.
No, not you personally,
right?
Absolutely not.
But I think the way our laws are written, in Maine, right? It's in Maine. Maine's law, Maine in particular's laws are set so that it's very, very difficult to hold somebody against their will in a hospital, even though they're exhibiting these sort of unsafe behaviors.
Well, it's interesting because you're 100% right. Like anybody who might have, interacted with this individual, I imagine that you have an insane amount of emotions that you're working through in that. And I just want to point out, like Jeremy just said, like this is not about blame. This is not, and that's the part that I think is really bothering me in the last 7 days the most is everybody's looking for somebody to blame. And the reality is there's a ton of blame in this situation specifically and all of its uniqueness, right? But the part that people aren't acknowledging that I'm struggling with is like we are kind of all to blame in a way, right? Like I think about the point that you just made of like we as a society have been okay with spending billions of dollars a year in this country to incarcerate people for anything that you can imagine, everything from traffic violations to drug possession to we've criminalized poverty, right? It's illegal to be unhoused in some communities. It's a crime that you don't have a house. We've criminalized poverty and we spend obnoxious amounts of money on our prison and jail systems, but we also live in a society where we can't collectively say that we need to spend money to safeguard people's mental health in order to safeguard the safety of people in our community. And so,
been so many times, Brandon, when we're working with people and we get them to the hospital because there's this acute mental health issue going on. It might be coupled with substance use or whatever's going on, and we get them up to the hospital, and they finally willing to go, and they go to the hospital, and then
they change their minds,
or they just
or the hospital kicks them out
in a waiting room for
hours.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a week. You know what I mean? Before you get admitted, and it's like the whole system is just it's overburdened. You know what I mean? And you think about the things that we were talking about this in the pandemic, the substance use, the poverty, like all these things are like overrunning our resources, right? It's like, so we need more resources. We need to spend more money. We don't need to build more prisons. We need to build more hospital beds. We need to build more detox beds. We need to build more people that work in the field, the first responders, the mental health counselors, the substance. It needs to be funded so that they can the field is profitable and grows, right? And grows, and like younger people attract do it, right? There's so many different things that could change, that could move us to a better place. But I think you're right. I think in a lot of ways that, like, we don't, we go about our daily lives collectively, and no one has time to write the congressman. No one has time to show up. You know what I mean? Like, it's really about a conscious effort, right? Like this bad thing, this thing that has shook me, is probably has shaken me for the rest of my life, just being so close to it and stuff, and being knowing all these people, and this thing is so shocking to us, right? Is that shock factor going to be there a year from now, when it's time to do the work? When you had to talk to the legislature, when you had to talk to, are we going to show up to Augusta to advocate for things that make sense for us? You know what I mean? Are we gonna allow the our state to continue to run and continue to put money towards, like, strictly like law enforcement and like the services are run through, like, you know what I mean? It's like the things that happen with our money, if we step back and said, man, we could, the money that this is going to, this thing of the financial impact of something like this happening, the resources that it took. It wasn't just Lewiston responded to it.
States, literally. States all around New England.
There was first responders from all over the area, bringing people to the hospital.
We had helicopters from New Hampshire.
Right. There's the financial impact of not doing something, right? If we spent money on finding, building facilities that could hold people for a year, 2 years, and whatever you need,
and hold them in a compassionate, caring model. Right. And that's the part that I've been struggling with too, is like we have normalized. I've said it a couple times already. I got to repeat it again. We've normalized punishment, and we've normalized criminalization. And we've normalized all these things that, like, we live with every day, like crime and criminals and jail and prison and punishment. And what we haven't normalized is, like, care. And so, like, when you say, like, millions of dollars were probably spent to respond to this crisis after 18 people were murdered, right? What if we had taken a fraction of that and responded to the crisis before 18 people were murdered? Because I don't think there's anybody in the country right now who's sitting here not thinking that that's good math, that we should have spent $100,000 to hold this person. But, like, how do we hold them? And this is the part that I was getting at earlier with community and love. You're right. Love cannot be the medicine for acute mental health illness, and community cannot be the prescription for people who are suffering from serious mental health issues, but it can be the conduit to create a mechanism that cares for people until they can get stabilized and well. And so if we showed up with love, if we had more community, if we had more compassion and empathy for our fellow man and woman who are in our streets, in our communities, our next door neighbors, if we had that, then maybe we would advocate for better systems of care right? Because that person and so many people in our communities who are struggling with mental health could be held in a safe environment with people there who treat them clinically and treat them with dignity and respect and humanity, not like a criminal, because that's what we know how to do. We know how to treat people like criminals, right? I'll even admit to myself, and this was something really hard I had to do this week. When I see people suffering from acute mental health illness and they're in my vicinity, I get extremely uncomfortable. I don't want to be around it. And I had to really look at myself in the mirror this week and go, why? Like, you're right. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell that person what medicine he can be on or she can be on, but I can say, hey, man, are you okay? And when they say no, I can say, what do you need? And if I can help, then I can help. And if we did that collectively as a community, and we did go to our state houses, and we did, go to the federal government, we stopped talking about all the divisive things. We started talking about, how do we care for each other? What would a facility like that look like, right? Where we built a facility that could have held Robert Card, who is a trained killer, who threatened to kill massive amounts of people. What would a facility look like that didn't completely isolate and demonize and punish him for those delusions, and instead cared him out of them? And like, man, maybe I'm being so fucking abstract right now that people are like, I don't know. This is just what's on my mind and in my heart right now. But like,
I think everybody knows that things didn't work. You know what I mean? Like, things didn't work, and that there were. I think they acknowledged that in the media, that there was things that there was gaps there that there was places to intervene, and that didn't really happen.
But would the interventions that we have in place, like, they would have, maybe they could have prevented this situation, but like the interventions that we have in place right now as a society, are they working? Like, are they actually, even when they are effective, like if we had been able to
I think it depends on, how much money you have, really. Like, if you're having delusions and you're asking for help, and where are you asking for, who are you asking the help from, right? Like, I think that there's a disparity in, right, like the quality of care that happens from people, you know what I mean, depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah, if you got the resources to seek the treatment and get the help, then you might get the best help in the world.
Like, that was very, very close to me. I was helping them get the treatment, and it took them, because of the insurance and because of they were in network. They were in a detox in a high-end treatment center of Florida, really very, very, very quickly, within a day, on a plane and out of here, down there in treatment, because they asked for it, right? Where's that for the, you know what I mean? Like, and that was because they were fortunate enough to have the insurance that was there in that situation, right? But if you call the people, your insurance, or you go to the military and you say, I need help, and they send you to the place, and then it doesn't help you, then what? There's got to be more. You know what I mean? That's a fact, and that's what we need to advocate for in the legislature on a macro level, right? But for me, it's like, sometimes this listening to, like, having this conversation is like overwhelming. Like, I feel like there's so many things, right? There's so many dynamics and aspects to it that I just want to like go hang out with my guys, you know what I mean? And I just want to stay with the people, you know what I mean? I just want to stay close to people, and like, it's just so hard to figure it all out. You know what I mean? Man, I just, like, you talk about the love, man. I just want to find it. You know what I mean? Just be around it. It's just, I was at the so I think it was it was Friday night. We were at the charity dinner. We were at the Friendship House fundraiser. Mm-hmm. And I was speaking there, and I was really talking about how, in my recovery, like, community is what really helped me, you know what I mean? And that's what I need, and that's what I seek out, And I guess that's what I meant by like, I got to get back to that because because I can't understand this other stuff. You know what I mean? I can't understand like, you know what I mean? Like connecting to the different energy. I can't it's too much at times. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I do. And I think I've been thinking a lot about the things that I can't understand either. And it's, man, I hope that there's somebody listening today that, you know, that we can get through to. Like, I don't think this was evil, man. I don't think this was evil. I think a lot of mass shootings are evil. I think that they're people who have extremist beliefs. I think this one was, you know, the source of somebody who is feeling really broken and really hurting. And I'm not sure that person was evil. I think in 20 years of military service, we probably would have found that out and the military could have addressed it. But I just want, like, dude, my heart is so broken, bro. Like, and what you just said just resonated with me so bad. I want love, man. And I just want to give it in abundance right now. To like the 18 people in our community who aren't coming home that we keep talking about. I think what we forget is there's actually 19 people in our community who aren't coming home because this person also killed themselves. And, you know, I think about the pain that everybody's feeling, and I think about, I'm trying to imagine the pain that he must have been feeling, and I'm trying to imagine a world where we can treat one person's pain so that, you know, the thousands of us who have been affected by their pain don't have to experience that. And, you know, what you just said really was like, oh, it hit me, man. It hit me different, you know, because you're 100% right. Like, that's what we're seeking right now. I think the vast majority of people in Lewiston are seeking love and community in the wake of this. And I just hope, you know, when I was at the vigil on Sunday night, it was the most heartbreaking, beautiful thing I've ever seen, you know, personally in my life, to see thousands of people come from this community to grieve with one another.
And I saw something there. It is what it is. But I saw a Muslim at the pulpit of the basilica.
Yeah,
which is, you know what I mean? It really was a moment of like people just coming together at that event.
Because that's what our community is. We are a diverse. We are racially diverse. We are sexually diverse. We are religiously diverse. And that's what was beautiful about it, was to see people come together in solidarity and so hold each other up. And man, there was one faith leader, I don't remember his name, but he said, in the wake of all this, will we become a better people? And that's the question that I just have resonating with me. You know, will I personally become a better person in light of all of this tragedy, in light of the anger that I feel, in light of the, you know, the holes in my heart for 18 people who, you know, I didn't know all of them personally. I knew a few of them, and I know a lot of people who knew them all very, very well. And I have empty spaces in my heart for them, but I also have spaces in my heart that the only way that I'm going to fill them is to see us change as a community in a really positive way. And like, the only thing I really want everybody to know is, like, I get the hatred, I get the anger, I get the fear, all of those emotions I've had coursing through me, but they're not answers, man. You know, they're not. And politics is going to grab a hold of those things, and they're going to use them to further divide people all about whether or not we should ban this type of gun and that type of magazine. And systems are going to grab hold of it and blame each other. And, you know, the police are being blamed, and our mental health systems are being blamed, and all these different people are being blamed because of those emotions that we're feeling. And I just hope that for somebody who's feeling rage right now and anger, that, like, you can hear me when I tell you that, man, I love you, and that you can also see the beauty in our community, and that we can come together as people and say, we got to start caring for each other. And for all the reasons that you just said, you know, I think we got to start caring for each other so we can build up compassionate systems that will address these issues and prevent them. And we got to start being intelligent with the way that we spend our money on prevention, because spending $10 million to push a bill through Congress to change what type of magazines that you can buy, that might be an answer, and it might save a few lives. But spending $10 million to establish caring services for people who are struggling might be a better answer. And I don't know how we do that. I don't know how we advocate for it. I don't know how we get people to stop thinking that the systems that we have can be, somehow reformed to work. It might be time to build something new instead of trying to chip away at something old. And, I just know that, for anybody from Lewiston, Auburn, from anybody from Maine who's listening into this episode, we're with you in solidarity today. We were with you 7 days ago, and we'll be with you every day moving forward because, we're all shaken up. And for everybody who's triggered and traumatized because we've experienced 565 mass shootings in the United States who's listening, we lift you up too. And for anybody who's struggling with their mental health and for anybody who's feeling isolated and marginalized, we love you too. And we hope that one day we live in a country where we actually care for people who are struggling instead of have this belief where people will just figure it out. That's not how it works. And I feel heavy, man. I think I'm gonna feel heavy for a while, but hopefully at some point, we see some change come through that makes us feel a little bit lighter and gives us the ability to smile fully again. But I don't know if you got anything else you want to add, man.
No, it's a lot, man. So, if I think about it, it's a lot of process. And, I've been trying to just take care of what's in front of me right now. You know what I mean? It's just a difficult experience. I never thought I'd deal with anything like this again. My thoughts go out to the victims' families and the people that were wounded and their families and everybody that was involved and that were in the bowling alley that witnessed this stuff. And it's just my heart goes out to you, man. I just sending you some love, man.
Yeah, we can tell you Behind the Door podcast is sending it in abundance, man, to the whole community in Lewiston, to everybody who was affected. And just to the whole country, man, and the whole world, for anybody that saw this and it drummed up some really difficult stuff for you. We're holding you in our hearts, and we pray and hope that you guys are doing the same for us because we're hurting too. And, we're here to build community, and we're going to keep doing that. And just want to give a big shout out to everybody who's tuning in and listening. And, thank you. Keep listening. We're going to keep talking about hard topics, good topics, fun topics, tough topics, real people, real stories. A lot of love to everybody supporting, man. Thank you for another, tuning in for another one.